Hello, everybody. It's Philip Lee returning with another episode of Civil War Chat. Today is the 23rd of September in 2021. Please click on the subscribe button in the lower right to subscribe to this podcast, and also the notification bell in the upper right to be notified when the new episodes get released. Today's episode is Confederate Memory and the Grand Inquisitor. The Grand Inquisitor is a story within a story of Fyodor Dostoevsky's novel, The Brothers Karamazov. It concerns the Inquisition when the church prosecuted heretics accused of beliefs contradictory to church doctrine. Galileo was among those investigated. His heretical belief was that the earth revolved around the sun. Rather than risk punishment, he retracted it. The Grand Inquisitor is an important part of Dostoevsky's novel and one of the best known passages in modern literature because it illuminates mankind's conflicting desires for security and freedom. Attempts to trade freedom for security, unfortunately, ultimately lead to authoritarianism, in which the authorities no longer care about the truth, but only about propagating the doctrines they adopted to make their subjects feel secure and to keep themselves in power. If you look at the present day America, I think you can see the connection. Anyway, this tale of the Grand Inquisitor is told by one Karamazov brother to a younger one. In the parable, Christ's second coming happens in Seville during the Spanish Inquisition. After he performs several miracles, the people recognize and adore him, but the church leaders condemn him to death the very next day. The 90-year-old Grand Inquisitor visits him in his cell the night before to say that the church no longer needs him. The old man tells Jesus that he was mistaken to reject the devil's three temptations in favor of freedom. By rejecting them, Jesus was going down the road of free will. According to the Grand Inquisitor, Jesus misjudged human nature. Since most people cannot manage freedom, the freedom that Jesus gave them, they will fall by the wayside and not attend church and thereby lose out on redemption. Instead, the Inquisitor says that Christ should have given people no choice. He should have instead taken the powers the devil offered and used them to give people security, not freedom. Since Jesus rejected the temptations, however, the multitude must now be guided through the church by the few leaders, like the Inquisitor, strong enough to assume the burden of freedom. He adds that, quote, anyone who can appease a man's conscience can take his freedom away, close quote. Isn't that happening right now with white guilt? Take away my white guilt for the mistreatment of blacks during slavery and afterward. And, you take away that guilt, and I'll give up some of my freedom if you'll take away that guilt. Christ, and according to the Inquisitor, according to the parable, Christ listens silently until the Inquisitor completes his explanation and then silently kisses the old man. The Inquisitor condescends to open the cell door and allow Christ to vanish into the night, but he tells Christ that he must never return. Leave everything up to the church instead. The theme of this story is that the church had outgrown Christ, or at least it believed it had. Christ's value was only that of a symbol whose name and likeness the clergy could invoke to make people obey. Similarly, quote, air quotes, diversity has become a symbol that is now more powerful than the valued thought diversity it is supposed to represent. In other words, diversity of thought is fine. Diversity on such superficial factors as skin color and gender is not so valued, not so important. But the present age sacrifices the true value of diversity of thought by replacing it with skin-deep diversity symbols such as race and gender. Just as in the parable, any appearance of diversity of thought must be destroyed by the clergy of the Church of Diversity, because it is a threat to the Church of Diversity. And this new church did not merely make us forget the true God of thought diversity. It has really made us forget that, but it has even since sentenced diversity of thought to the gallows. And that is why there is no diversity of thought on campus, only a superficial diversity of skin color and gender. Now, without diversity of thought, our colleges cannot permit a Southern viewpoint of the Civil War and Reconstruction. There is no way it can survive on campus. It is derisively rejected, even before it is heard, as so-called lost cause mythology by people that promote what I call pious cause mythology. But even if diversity of thought returns, like the second coming of Christ during the Spanish Inquisition in the parable, academic historians will kill thought diversity because they choose to perpetuate their own power instead of teaching the truth. So that's where we stand. Now, here's something you can do to combat it. Consider reading and buying my book, Causes of the Civil War, which looks at not only the reasons the South chose to fight the war, but why the Northerners chose to fight the war. And why the Northerners chose to fight the war is very seldom investigated by the academic historians. Basically, the Northerners fought the Civil War because they wanted to avoid the economic consequences of disunion. One of those consequences would be a low tariff country on their southern border. They could not have that. They demanded high tariffs so they could have domestic monopolies in their leading industries. The New England textile mills, the iron products companies of Pennsylvania and elsewhere, as well as the woolen textile mills. All three of those industries benefited from protective tariffs. The start of the Civil War, protective tariffs were 19%. For the next 50 years, until Woodrow Wilson became president, protective tariffs tariffs on dutiable items averaged 19%. So this is a key point. The North went to war over tariffs, not the South. It was the North that wanted high tariffs, and they did that. They kept the tariffs at 45% for 50 years after the Civil War started. So if you'd like to buy the book, you can get it at Barnes & Noble or Amazon for $22. But if you want an autographed copy, you can get it from me. Email me, Phil, PHIL _Leigh, LEIGH @me.com. Okay, that is our show for today, and I want to thank you for watching. I'll see you next time.